trusted name in news.
President Bush's decision to hold a summit with the Israeli and Palestinian prime ministers is his biggest commitment to the Middle East peace process since he took office. Joining me now, two experts on the Middle East, Stephen Cohen, a national scholar of the Israel Policy Forum, and Naseer Aruri is the author of Dishonest Broker, America's Role in Israel and Palestine. It is good to have you both here. Let me begin with the first question. Are you more hopeful of a successful result from this peace process than any other that's preceded it? And I'll begin with you, if I may.
Yes, I am more hopeful. I'm more hopeful because the United States has taken on a role not only to design things, but actually to be on the ground as the monitor. And that presence, where the United States is going to be deciding whether the Israelis have met their requirements, whether the Palestinians have met their requirements, rather than let the Palestinians decide whether Israelis have met their requirements and Israelis have met Palestinian requirements, that makes a huge difference.
Do you agree, Naseer?
Well, I should like to really be more hopeful, but maybe I'm not, given the legacy of a failed peace process that has been going on really since 1968 under U.S. tutelage. I mean, the United States had played the role of catalyst for peace and honest broker, but after we saw many plans sponsored by the U.S., I mean, every single administration has a plan named after its president or secretary of state, but nothing really came out of it.
Or a senator or a CIA director.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's the Zinni plan and the Mitchell plan and so on. But I mean, none of these things have worked. So I think that unless we answer the question why these things did not work and what can be learned from the past, maybe the road ahead will be difficult.
Well, you threw in an admiral as well, Professor, as I would expect you to be comprehensive in this. Let me ask you, why in the world do we have to look back? We have seen administration after administration, Republican and Democrat, fail at this. We have a very big difference to consider, it seems to me, this time. U.S. troops are in Iraq. This administration has made clear it is intending to influence Middle East outcomes. It is an expression of the will of the state that we've never seen before. Does that in any way change things, Professor, for you?
Well, you see, Lou, I think that the question here is that the facts on the ground are, to me, far more important than the rhetoric and the words. And as Amira Haas wrote in today's Haaretz, the Israeli daily, I mean, she talks about the facts on the ground, particularly with the wall that is being built. They call it the separation fence, but it's really more of a wall that has taken much of the farmland in the West Bank. I mean, that's the fruit basket, that is the vegetable basket. It sits on top of 80% of the water resources. So the question is that if the roadmap has a vision for a state, the question is, where is this state going to be established? I think that at best, it would be a fragmented collection of Bantustans that are 3 in the West Bank and 1 in Gaza. And so that's going to be the problem.
Can we reverse the Bantustans as Naseer suggests?
I think that Naseer is not hearing the music of the way this thing is starting.
Right.
The fact that the Prime Minister of Israel uses the O word, occupation, to describe Israel's situation in the West Bank. This is not something that he has seen before or that I have heard before. We know this is different. And what is different here is that the United States has decided that from the start, it's taking away from the two parties the methods of pursuing this conflict that they've used all along. The Palestinians are not going to be able to use their violent methods. The Israelis are not going to use their settlement construction. Both of these have to stop in the first part of the roadmap. Therefore, you're going to have a different kind of negotiation, not a negotiation where each side is able to take its bat and hit the other one over the head the first time there's trouble.
You disagree, Naseer?
Well, I really like to agree. I mean, after all, there are many people who are involved in this, and many people's lives are affected by this. But you see, when Prime Minister Sharon talks about occupation for the first time, and I know that occupation never appeared in 800 pages of Oslo documents, this may be a good sign. However, yesterday he received a lot of complaints and flack, really, from his colleagues, and he assured them that this does not really mean anything any more than he does not want to rule over 3.5 million people. So if Sharon says there's an occupation, a legal concept, it has to end, etc., then well and good. But I don't think that he's really saying that.
Well, Naseer, you are a student of this process. Fewer are as knowledgeable, certainly Stephen, in your ranks. But you do have to take it as remarkable, one that for the first time the Israeli government has said that it will recognize a Palestinian state. And secondly, you talk about Sharon taking on considerable flack. Mahmoud Abbas is also taking on considerable flack. Flack will be a condition of this negotiation, will it not?
Absolutely. There's no question that Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, is going to run into very heavy weather. There's no question that Sharon, if he does it, is going to run into heavy weather. But that's exactly the role that the United States has to be playing. The United States has to be saying to the parties, this is the necessity that the international community requires at this time. This is a necessity for your peoples, and this is the necessity for the international community.
Naseer, let me ask you and Stephen both. The fact is, you talked about the facts on the ground. The facts on the ground are this, that the death continues for both Palestinians and Israelis. The Israeli economy has been devastated over the course of the past better than 2 years now. The devastation to the Palestinians, already in a desperate state, has been awful. With these facts on the ground, is it perhaps a benefit that the United States is acting with greater will in the region and could, well, in effect, impose its will on this process?
What I think the United States is doing is finally creating an imposing process. What I mean by that is it's not telling the parties exactly what the solution is, but it's telling them no more delays. You have to solve this problem, and you have to do it now, and you have to do it in the next few years as a final agreement. That is the key. It is forcing the parties to finally make decisions, because these parties are both very wary of each other, very suspicious of agreements.
Do you think the United States will be tough enough on Israel to demand enough is enough?
I think that what Bush showed last week, when the Prime Minister wouldn't come to Washington, and that he said, I'm not going to be stood up for this date. I'm going to go ahead. And he stood up and he called Abu Mazen himself and got the process going. And by the end of the week, he had the agreement of the Israeli government. That's something different. That's the president saying, I'm working on my timetable. And my timetable is the international timetable of getting this problem solved.
Naseer, you have the very last word.
If that is the case, then I would be really very optimistic. I mean, if there's going to be an imposed settlement. But I mean, I think there's a history here of 36 years where that phrase, imposed settlement, was problematic, I think, politically and otherwise. Now, whether Mr. Bush is going to do what he didn't do a year ago when he asked Sharon to get out of the occupied of the cities in the West Bank, and Sharon did not do it, I mean, that's a different matter.
Yes, sir.
There is also just one very quick question, and that is, will the 14 amendments that the Israeli cabinet proposed be taken into account? And
I don't
Sharon
think that
says
those 14 amendments are going to turn out to be very unimportant if the Palestinians can do one thing: stop the killing.
And the conditions for progress here remain as much as they have been. And perhaps we should all be focusing, Naseer, if I may, I did not, and I don't, I feel a little concerned here, imposed settlement. My word is imposing its will. If that should result in a settlement, I think all of us would be delighted. But imposing the will of this government in the region, I think, is the direction this administration has chosen to follow.
Getting them, forcing them to make a decision of their own, not telling them what that decision is, but telling them that they have to make a decision. That's what he's doing. He's bringing them together, and he's doing something else.
I was quickly because
he's bringing the Arabs together. The Arabs are going to be in Aqaba. Israeli and the Palestinians are going to be in Sharm el-Sheikh. The Israelis are going to be in Aqaba with the Palestinians. He's got to make a bridge.
Naseer, I promise you the last word. Stephen took it away. I got to give it back to you. You get the last word. Quickly, please.
Well, okay. Let's hope that the meeting in Aqaba of the Arabs will be more than actually putting pressure on the weaker party here. Because, I mean, let's not forget that one of the conditions that Israel has is that the basis will be 242, 338, but not the plan of Saudi Arabia that seems to reflect the global consensus. I think that if that is really set aside, things may not develop as well as we want them to, and we hope that things will develop in a more positive direction.
Naseer Aruri, we thank you for being here, and I even detected a little building positiveness about the whole process as we wrap up here. It's great to have you with us. Stephen Cohen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You're both terrific. Come back soon, and hopefully we'll be discussing progress.